Welcome to the Game Changers Podcast, bringing you insights and influencers from the wide world of sports, business, and personal development. Here's your host, former professional athlete, author, speaker, and game changer himself, Rennie Curran. It's time to get your head in the game.
What's going on, world? This is your boy, Rennie Curran. Thank you so much for joining me on the Game Changers Podcast. It's been a little while. I have not been able to post as much as I want as far as doing the podcast. As an entrepreneur, for most of you guys who live that life, it's crazy. Like, you're always on the move. You always have to constantly be in action. You always have to be constantly having engagements. And for me, being a speaker, being an author, being a business coach, it never ends. And so sometimes I kind of can get away from doing the podcast as regularly as I should. But I promise with this new year coming around, I'm going to do a lot better job. The topic that I want to talk about today is something that has impacted me my whole entire life. From being an athlete, from being a speaker, author, now overall entrepreneur, which is personal branding. And I was able to pull up this quote, and it's by a gentleman by the name of Tom Peters, who's a fellow author and speaker as well. He's somebody who talks a lot about business excellence and a lot of different topics as pertaining to business and operating in the highest form, operating with excellence. That's something business-wise, sports-wise, is something that's very, very important. And the quote goes like this. It says, "All of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you." That's Tom Peters, and I got that from the Fast Company website. And he's the man. But before I go on talking about personal branding, I got to first and foremost give a shout out to my alma mater, one of the finest football schools in the land. Not football schools, but colleges in the land. The University of Georgia, the Bulldogs, y'all. They did their thing back a couple weeks ago. SEC championship. They, of course, had a lot of haters. A lot of people were doubting them, saying that the Tigers were going to come to Georgia, first of all, which I did not believe, and beat us, and they showed up. That dome was rocking, and we took care of business. I got to give a special shout out to a couple players, man, especially starting with my guy, Roquan Smith. The guy reminds me so much of myself, linebacker number 3. This dude had 13 tackles. I mean, wow. As a linebacker, playing your butt off in a game like that, man, that dude, his stock is as high as it can get. And he really, really balled out. We had a big play by Davin Bellamy, a sack fumble that kind of changed the momentum of the game. And from then on, the Bulldogs just showed up and showed out. The guys on the offensive side of the ball, we had like Sony Michel doing his thing. Nick Chubb, of course, even had the young guys get involved, making plays. Mr. Swift made his runs, just all across the board, offensively, defensively, special teams. Miko Hartman, I believe his last name is. Dude showed out, man. He's a young buck, but made a lot of good plays. So for you guys who aren't Georgia Bulldog fans, make sure you watch out for them. The next game that they'll be playing in is, of course, New Year's against Oklahoma, which is going to be for that playoff. Sudden death, it's when to go home. It's going to be live. And so I'm excited. It's going to be out in Pasadena for that game. And then I'll actually be at the national championship game. So just got my confirmation that I'll be a college football legend for that game. Don't really know what that means, but they gave me some free tickets, so I'm going to be there in full flesh. So I'm excited for that. But back to personal branding. Let's get out of football, because we're not here to just talk about football. But also I got to give a shout out to my Brookwood Broncos. They weren't able to finish the drill and make it to the state championship. They got to the semifinals. That's my high school, Snellville, Georgia, represent. So they lost in that semifinal game, and I had the opportunity to go there as well. And it was tough, because for those of you all who have been student athletes who have played high school sports, I mean, you know how it is when you get to that last game and you realize that's it. It's a lot of tears, a lot of emotions. I mean, unless you don't really love the game, but for me, I love the game. And so it took me back to that moment, just being a high school athlete in my senior year and realizing that it was over. And luckily for me, I got to play at D1, but for everybody, that's not the case. So it was definitely a challenging thing. But all right, personal branding, personal branding. So for me, personal branding starts back to, believe it or not, my days as an athlete. When you look at recruiting and going through the whole entire process, a lot of it has personal branding has a major role in a lot of that. When it comes to your brand, when it comes to how a team that potentially wants to give you a scholarship perceives you. And so for me, when I look at my career at Brookwood High School, coming out, and I was this 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid trying to get this scholarship to a major D1 school. It started with my brand. It started with, number one, me getting in the weight room from about 13 years old, 14 years old. I had to get in that weight room and kill myself. I had to make sure that when they looked at me, when those coaches saw my film, or when they saw me in person, which I did a lot of visits to different schools like the Georgia Techs, Auburns, to Georgia, I had to make sure that they were like, man, this dude looks like he could rip somebody's head off. He looks like he could destroy somebody. And so that was part of my brand, is just looking the part. For most of y'all who aren't athletes or who haven't been in that world, a lot of who gets chosen, who gets promoted, it has a lot to do with passing what's called the eye test. Believe it or not, it's a beauty contest a lot of times. And you look at a guy who maybe, if they're looking for a linebacker per se, like my position, a guy, they usually want guys who are anywhere from 6 foot to 6'3". I was 5'10" and a half, 5'11". So I did not all the time meet the eye test when it came to what a lot of schools wanted, but I had a lot of other things going for myself, like the fact that I had a lot of quickness, I had a lot of speed, I had leadership abilities, I had great character, I had people who, speaking on my behalf, who said nothing but good things about me. I had great teammates. We were winning games, so that always helps in terms of your brand, is knowing how to win those big games and showing up on film. So a lot of times when I got recruited, they weren't even looking at me. This is a lesson for life, but they weren't always trying to even recruit me. A lot of times they were trying to recruit somebody else, and I just happened to show up on film and was doing what I needed to do consistently. And so that was a big part of my brand. And then as I moved up to the Georgia and then to the NFL, my brand expanded even more, because now I'm doing interviews. Now my jersey is being sold in Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods. Now I become kind of that household name. So instead of me just looking at myself as just an athlete, as just somebody who's making plays, now I realize that, hey, I'm essentially my own business. I'm essentially somebody who can either help raise or lower somebody's revenue. If you look at how much business is generated every Saturday in Athens, or every Saturday in, somewhere like at University of Florida in Gainesville, so much business is generated on whether that team wins or loses, or how high they go up in the bowl games and whatnot. So you start to understand very quickly that it's bigger than just football. It's bigger than just being that athlete brand, that you actually have an influence. And so whenever I'd go and I'd have a big game and I come back home, I had the opportunity to use that influence, to use my brand. And then from there, as I got into the NFL, and as I got cut for the first time and got into the business world, as a speaker first, well, really as an author first, I wrote my first book in 2013 entitled Free Agent, and that kind of opened up the door for me to become a public speaker. And so once I dived into that world, I realized that now I had the opportunity to leverage my brand that I had built as an athlete to now expand into other things, into going out and using my name recognition to be able to speak to people, or be able to write books and deliver a product or service. And so that's kind of where I'm at now as an entrepreneur. My personal brand, I realize that's everything. It can make or break you. And so I really today just wanted to give you guys some tips just on how to really go about building your personal brand, because it's not just about building your personal brand per se. I feel like you really, really have to go about it in the right way, and make sure that you're going in the right direction when you do decide that, hey, I want to take what I'm doing to the next level. Like you can be somebody, honestly, who just says, okay, I'm just going to go to work, or I'm just going to be an athlete. And I mean, that's what most people do. Most people never really understand the influence that they have, the platform that they have, and try to expand that. And the dangers of not having a personal brand or not even thinking about a personal brand is the fact that you're always replaceable. If you have no brand recognition, if you have no perceived value, when it comes to making cuts, you'll be the first one to go, whether that's if you're on a football team or if you're on a job. You see it more and more nowadays, the fact that there's disruptive innovation. So much of that going on. You got the Ubers of the world. You have the Airbnbs. You have so many industries now that exist. Like, for instance, financial advisors, insurance agents, real estate agents. All these individuals, if you're in this industry, you definitely need to listen to this message. You definitely need to be thinking about your personal brand and how to expand that brand, because you're one app away from being completely replaced. You're one innovation away from your job not existing anymore. So if you don't have, similar to us athletes, we have to really think about, expanding our brand and not just putting all our eggs in one basket per se. So just like the same mentality that we have of having a plan A, but having a plan B, C, D, I believe that in your job, you have to have the same thing. You have to have the same discipline and foresight to see ahead and to have almost like a succession plan and make sure that, hey, if something happens, if your department gets replaced or if there's a merger that happens, that make sure that you're covered. I mean, think about it. If your job were to end tomorrow, like, how quickly could you monetize your knowledge, and how quickly could you find another job or another opportunity? How well known are you in your industry? Those are some things just to think about before we get into these tips. But I got 4 tips for you as you're thinking about just your personal brand and really building that out. The first tip that I have for you, first question, as I should say, is you have to ask yourself, what do I represent? What do I represent? And when I think of that, I'm thinking like in terms of your values, in terms of like, what you're known for. When you come into a room, when you show up at your company, when people are talking about you when you're not around, what are those things that come up? What do you represent? What do you think your life represents? What do you think your habits represent, or your work experience? If you were to go down the line, if somebody was to do an evaluation on you and your career, like, what would that represent? And that's something to think about, because you want to make sure that what you represent is aligned with the brand that you try to promote. And that's some of the things that I see nowadays with people in their social media. It's like they'll try to present something outwardly to the world that's not consistent with who they really are, who they, essentially represent, like, by their actions. So you could say all day, you could talk about it, you could have the best marketing or whatever it is when it comes to what you're trying to promote or what you're trying to look like. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of ultimately what you're trying to represent and what you want your life to stand for. So the next tip after that is, what are your areas of expertise? You have to ask yourself that. What are my areas of expertise? What are my strengths? What are those things that I know that I know that I know? What are those things that I could talk about all day in my sleep and do in my sleep with confidence without having to second guess myself? And that's something that you really want to think about as well as you build your personal brand, because that's essentially how you're going to be able to monetize your brand and be able to find the best opportunities, is by knowing, where you fit in, knowing your lane, and knowing how you can best create solutions and provide outcomes. After that, after knowing your expertise, is knowing who your target audience is, having a good understanding. That's something, once again, that's a major issue for a lot of people who try to build their personal brand and try to expand what they're doing. They don't have a full understanding of the customer who they're trying to serve. So have you ever had somebody who tried to sell you something and, they are totally off in terms of your needs, in terms of like what you see as important, and they're trying to sell you something that, like, you know for a fact you don't need it all. And you may just try to be nice to them and say, oh, yeah, I'll meet with you. Or, oh, yeah, I hear you out on this product, or I hear you out on this service, but you don't need it essentially. And so it's like you have to tell them eventually that, hey, bro, like, thank you for this offer, but I really, really don't need this at all. And they may still try to push it on, but I feel like those are the type of people who really have not taken the time to understand who their target audience is, who they need to get in front of, and then that audience's needs. What do they see as important? What do they value at the end of the day? That's so important that you think about that, or else when you do establish your personal brand, you're going to be kind of one of those people who are, start out with an opportunity for a couple months and then it kind of fades out, and then you're off to another opportunity, you're off to another product, to trying to, offer another thing. So it's so important that you understand who you need to be in front of. It also leads to a lot of frustration when you're constantly, especially if you have to be that salesperson, which we all are salesperson, but if you're making those calls, if you're sending out the resumes or whatever it is, and, a lot of times if you don't understand that point of contact or that person who you're eventually going to have to get a yes from, it can be very frustrating to get no after no after no, just simply because you're not understanding their mindset and what they need essentially from you. So definitely ask yourself, who is my target audience? Make sure you study them as much as possible. Make sure you understand their pain points or the challenges that they face. Make sure you understand how you can best offer them value. And the last tip that I have for you, the fourth one, is who can I partner with? I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs or as people in general, when we're trying to build our personal brand or really trying to take things to the next level, we have the tendency to feel like we have to be on this island and like we have to take on the world and put it on our shoulders, and it's us against the world. And, really, I feel like life and entrepreneurship and business is all about collaboration. The better you can find ways to partner with somebody and create a win-win, the better off your brand will be. And you see it happen all the times with corporate brands. You have an Apple that'll partner with a Beats by Dre so they can reach a certain audience, or, even certain, celebrities will partner with other celebrities, for instance. Companies buy out other companies that you wouldn't even think of. It happens all the time. It's collaboration. There's strength in numbers, and that's something I always realize. So for me, I'm always trying to look at who can I partner with that has the same values as me? Who can I link up with as far as another person that's in my industry or in my field? It's enough resources to go around in my world. That's how I look at things, from an abundance mindset and not from a scarcity mindset. So I'm always looking at who can I help, who can I bring on board as far as my team, or just meet with to get a little bit of information or get a little bit of knowledge, or, who can I just connect with that can take what I'm doing to the next level, and how can I help them take things to the next level. It's never just about me. So those are just 4 tips that I have when it comes to your personal brand. I really hope that helps you with what you're trying to do as a game changer, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an athlete. These rules all apply. These principles apply to everyone, no matter where you are in life. So once again, it's what do I represent? Just to give you a recap. What do I represent? What are my areas of expertise? Who is my target audience? And who can I partner with? Those are 4 questions that you should ask yourself when it comes to developing your personal brand. And last but not least, I want to leave you with this quote from Mr. Seth Godin. And his quote says, "A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another." Let me say that one more time without messing it up. A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. I can't get that right. So yeah, those are some of my tips for today. Really hope that, like I said, that added value to whatever you're trying to do. If I can ever help any of you all that are listening right now, you can visit my website. It's renniecurran.com. And you can also follow me on social media on Instagram at Rennie Curran, on Twitter at Rennie Curran53. I'm on Facebook. I'm on everything. So reach out to me. Let me know any thoughts that you have also on personal branding and how you can take things to the next level and be that game changer. So I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to sharing the next show. If you have any ideas on things that you'd like to hear me talk about on the next show, please feel free to reach out to me as well. And last but not least, just want to leave you with the challenge to never get caught up in this rat race of life and never fall short of where you know you're supposed to be in life. Always, always, always strive to be a game changer.